Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I wasn't actually planning on covering this as I've been busy with a lot of different ideas over the past few days, and there's not a lot of information that needs to be imparted. However, I have been inundated with people wanting me to talk about this particular topic, and that actually made me realize that whether I intended to or not, the topic of loot boxes surrounding the conversation of gambling in video games has become a bit of a staple on my channel, and it is an ever-evolving subject that I might have been doing you all a disservice if I didn't cover it. So this is to discuss the recent announcement that now Finland is joining the debate on whether loot boxes are gambling, picking up their cue from Belgium's ruling in April of this year. And the implications for this could be akin to a string of dominoes slowly toppling over. I'm not saying that this is what will happen, but it is certainly something that myself and many others do fervently hope for, and I'll tell you why when we get to my opinions on this. As always, I will be stating the facts first without my opinion, and then I'll provide my take on things and I'll pass it off to you. Links to any sources used, along with links to my social media, Discord, and Patreon are in the description down below, and it would mean the world to me if you would consider checking them out. Now, I'm unsure if this is due to Google Translate being in error or if this is accurate, but the article from Helsingin Sanomat, and I'm probably saying that wrong, states most of the information comes from the Lottery Commission, so for the sake of being forced to rely on translation, I will be referring to them as the Lottery Commission and not the Gambling Commission, as my brain keeps on trying to infer. So let's run through the facts here. Firstly, loot boxes in Finland are being investigated by Finnish police. This is not a determination, and no findings have been disclosed at this time. It's also reported that the investigation is only now just beginning, so it's too early to tell if their findings will be that loot boxes either are or are not violating Finnish lottery or gambling laws. Also, at this time, the Finnish police have not disclosed what game they are investigating. However, the four categories being cited from the Finnish Lottery Commission underscore the following points, and please bear with me as I'm attempting to paraphrase and contextualize an admittedly flawed translation here. The first point is that with these loot boxes, they can be obtained either in part or in whole by paying real-world money either for the loot boxes or by purchasing in-game currency. The second is that the contents of the loot boxes are not known prior to their being opened, meaning there is a randomization factor. This is why I myself have alluded to loot boxes being similar to a slot machine in that regard. The third point they made involves the monetary aspect. In this, they state that the contents of loot boxes would be considered gambling if they can be exchanged for real-world money, regardless of whether it can be done from within the platform of the game, or Steam in some instances, or if it can be done via a third party. This is what is defined as an open system of trading. Games like Overwatch operate under what is defined as a closed system where no direct or third-party trading can take place, so titles like that would not qualify under this particular rule. And the fourth rule cited is that not only do these games not have a valid lottery license to engage in these practices, it would seem that they're also incapable of getting said license, which offers up some very interesting implications that I'll talk about in just a moment. Also, within the article, Mikko Cantrell, a senior officer of the Finnish Police Department, advises gamers to report the game to the Lottery Commission if they have loot box mechanics within them. And my take on all of this is that this is potentially fascinating to watch. We know that there are several game publishers and studios that are acceding to the wishes of the Belgian Gambling Commission, with a very notable exception of Electronic Arts, and if Finland follows suit, this will provide yet one more example of a government finally waking up to the current realities of loot boxes and how they're implemented. Although, with Finnish laws surrounding lottery and gambling practices, this all seems to be surrounding the fact that these video games do not have a license for these practices, nor can they even obtain one. And I found that to be pretty interesting because it speaks very much to what we see with legal systems regardless of what country you're in, and how woefully out of date most countries' laws actually are when it comes to the realities of the world of the internet and the digital marketplace. They simply are not designed to be able to be even remotely similar to what the digital world calls for, and as a result, we are left with unregulated digital gambling where the game developers and publishers are able to, and have been allowed, free rein to be as shady and manipulative as they want. Now, a lot of people have said that this never would have happened were it not for the pay-to-win slot machine that was Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA, and in some ways, they're not entirely wrong. Now, that game went so far into the extreme of just how predatory these systems can be and how much they can break a game that they made a lot of people stand up and take notice. And while the publishers and developers of these games cling to the tired old line of player choice and being aware of those who don't have the time to invest in your game, it's all complete bullshit. We saw it with Battlefront 2 EA just as we saw it with Middle-earth Shadow of War. When both of those games did away with their pay-to-win loot box gambling, they had to spend months completely rebalancing the game in order to account for the absence of the pay-to-win mechanics, and it is that sort of manipulation within even the simplest of microtransactions that I absolutely despise within the modern video game. Now, I've been playing a couple of games recently that I've been really enjoying, Shadows Awakening and The Bard's Tale 4, but don't tell anyone because The Bard's Tale isn't even out yet. But within both of those games, I found, or I should say I rediscovered, something that I'd nearly forgotten. And both of those games, which are single-player, admittedly, have rich worlds with good stories and great characters with interesting and engaging game mechanics. I have been thoroughly enjoying each of them, and there are a few different aspects that allow me to do so that actually feed into each other. The first is that there is nary a microtransaction in either one of them, and that actually sets us up for something spectacular that we just don't see with AAA cash cows anymore. It is the fact that without those microtransactions, there is no way to, quote, avoid the grind. This forces the game's developers to make sure that the games are good enough to be able to stand up for themselves. This forces the developers to focus on the details along with making sure that the game itself is engaging and that it is entertaining enough to provide an enjoyable experience. In short, it is the sort of thing that I wish the entire gaming industry would espouse. Create a great game for a fair price, and then people will buy your great game at a fair price. When companies implement microtransactions, regardless of the reason, they put them there because they want you to use them. And when that happens, they transition from being a game developer to being just a businessman interested in nothing more than the bottom line. Games can still be fantastic and sell extremely well, even if they don't have microtransactions within them. Look at The Witcher 3, for example. CD Projekt Red did the exact same thing there. They churned out an amazing product for a good price, and people ate it up. And now CD Projekt Red is the first name that most people think of when they're asked about a AAA developer that can be trusted. As a result of that trust, CD Projekt Red are able to keep focusing on producing content that they love and knowing that people want to buy it. Now look at EA and Activision Blizzard and Take-Two Interactive and all of the others. They rely on microtransactions instead of producing a good product. I can't even remember the last Battlefield game I actually enjoyed. Overwatch, it's an amazingly well done and smooth hero shooter, but all of its animated shorts and the like allude to a larger game that we could have gotten, but never did because of the focus on the multiplayer loot box economy. That doesn't detract from the fact that it is a good multiplayer-only game, but it is still but a pale shadow of what it could have been. Microtransactions have taken the place of actual game design, so much so that, as I said, when the loot box mechanics and microtransactions are removed, the games and their progression end up being completely broken. You see, I don't just see loot boxes as gambling. I see them as a detriment to games at every level. They promote laziness. Games that implement them end up being less interesting and ultimately less enjoyable. As publishers have refined their tactics over the years, games that employ these systems have grown far too formulaic and ultimately generic as a result. So while yes, I do see these steps by these European countries as good and necessary, I wish that more countries would stand up and take notice even quicker. Loot boxes, most microtransactions that, let's face it, really aren't all that micro in nature, are a blight on this industry that degrades video games. And I do hope that Finland sees them in a light similar to Belgium and the Netherlands. And that's where I think I'll leave off here, and I'm interested to see your take on things down in the comments below. Now, thank you so much for watching. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.